Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoteric. I got a very interesting episode for you guys today because I'm cutting into my own intro of the video I was going to run it for, where I talked about what tariffs were and how they could potentially impact the Switch 2 pricing and launch. And about 10 minutes ago, Nintendo announced that the pre-order has been delayed so they can examine the tariffs effects on the Switch 2 pre-order. So I'm guessing you're going to see a $500 or $550 Nintendo Switch 2 by the time we're done. So we're going to talk about tariffs today and how they're going to impact gaming. Try to be cool in the comments, don't beat everyone up too much, let's be adults about it, but I'm going to jump right back into the original video where we talk about what tariffs mean for gaming and how it's really not going to be good for anyone. But as far as the announcement of the Switch 2 and its actual retail price both for games as well as the console, this bakes in the idea of tariffs. A lot of companies do research on what is expected and they try to price their products accordingly so that if any sort of tariffs are coming through, they've already baked that price into the MSRP. Because I can tell you right now, no major company is going to eat the cost of tariffs and sell you something at the cheapest possible price. They are in business to make money, so don't ever expect that these tariffs will be eaten by a company and they won't pass the price off to you. That's exactly what they do. But I want to explain what a tariff is so you're all on the same page and how it's actually calculated. But basically, a tariff is a tax or a charge on goods that are imported into the United States at the time that they hit a port of entry with their declared value written on them. So if it costs X amount of dollars to make one item, you're going to have a tariff applied to that cost of manufacturing and the declared value. I want to stress that the tariffs are not calculated based upon the MSRP or the retail price you're going to see Nintendo ask for, and it's going to be important to talk about the overall cost to gamers moving forward. And before you ask Video Game Esoterica, what sort of basis do you have to actually talk about this sort of thing? And I will explain. Outside of being a filmmaker, when I worked at Burton Snowboards handling all of the team and brand management, I also traveled over to China to factories and dealt with all of the import paperwork into the port of entries, including all of the taxes. That was part of my responsibility, so I have handled this more than once in my life. And the interesting thing is, Nintendo did try to work around this by moving some manufacturing to Cambodia. They planned ahead because they did anticipate new tariffs coming because they came previously as well, and they tried to relocate some of their manufacturing, but unfortunately that's just not going to be super effective for them because we can see the tariffs are basically any country that manufactures anything. So think of it this way, every single electronic item you buy, every console, every game has to be manufactured somewhere, and most of those things are manufactured in China, Taiwan, Vietnam, places such as that, which means that now suddenly every single item that comes to our shores and has to be imported is going to be assessed that tariff, and the companies are going to have to make that money up, and you know full well they are going to make it up from you. There's export data that apparently Nintendo has already sent in 383,000 Switch 2s to the US ahead of the tariffs, and I can guarantee you companies were scrambling to get their products onto our shores before the tariffs went into effect, because until the tariffs are actually applicable, there is no tariff whatsoever. So it's definitely a shell game of trying to figure out not only what's the least you can pay as a company, but also the proper timing to get things into a port of entry so that you can avoid paying any tariffs, or you can pay a lower percentage versus what it might be next week. It is a gigantic shell game, basically like playing the stock market except on taxation of imported goods, and trust me, it gets more complicated than that. But if you actually look at the macroeconomic impact of something like a tariff, you can see it directly in the Nintendo Switch 2 price, and pretty much every comment I got yesterday and most of the internet was just abuzz with talking about how expensive the Nintendo Switch 2 is compared to its predecessor, getting very close to a PlayStation 5 or Xbox Series X cost, even though the hardware is not as capable. You're seeing $450 just for the console and $500 with a bundle for the new Mario Kart game. I can 100% guarantee you that this increased cost is not just Nintendo trying to bilk the consumer, and trust me, it's not like I'm a massive Nintendo business fan around this channel. This is in direct relationship to them knowing that tariffs were coming, because even though they've raised the price, their actual profit margin probably hasn't changed whatsoever. That increase is probably just covering the tariff. So when Nintendo sells a Switch 2, their profit margin is probably staying very close to identical as what it would have been had it been $350. They are just accommodating for the upcoming tariffs. And interestingly enough, if we take a look at the Switch 2 game key cards we discussed yesterday, you know full well these are going to be incredibly cheap to manufacture because flash memory is not inexpensive whatsoever. It is not maybe as high as it's ever been, but it is kind of straddling the middle road for expense. So if you can just sell a game key that maybe costs 90 cents to manufacture because there's no data held on there and they don't have to have a large memory chip to hold the game, you're going to pay a tariff on a much reduced price, leaving more of the profit to both Nintendo and and the publisher versus having to sell a game that costs you $30 to manufacture. But let's move over to another example. Let's just take a look at this Steam Deck, and I did research where these things are manufactured and shipped in from, and that is what really matters. Whatever country it's originating from before it hits the United States, that final entry point. Let's just say that there's another $100 in tariffs coming on something like a Steam Deck. Valve has two options. They can eat the cost and continue to sell it at $3.99, or they can pass it on to you, and based upon the country that the Steam Deck is coming from, it looks like it could get somewhere around like $90 to $110 in tariffs next time a shipment hits importation. And that is really why I say, and I'm not trying to fearmonger, you are going to probably be paying a lot more for your gaming habits moving forward. Now, as far as the tariffs are concerned, how long are they going to last? Absolutely nobody has any idea, and that's why I really hope the comment section doesn't turn into too much of a mess here. This is something that could be gone next week. It's something that could be gone next month. It's something that could be with us for the next 3 and change years. Absolutely nobody has any idea how long they will last, and anyone that tells you they do is either an insider and you should listen to them, or just absolutely blowing smoke up your ass. I don't know. I'll never know. It is not my field of interest. But again, this is just why you're seeing these prices. People just went absolutely wild when the cost of the Switch 2 came out, and I wasn't surprised whatsoever. I would have loved to have seen it less than $450, but that's just the reality of the situation. And trust me, I get that this sucks, and it's going to suck for everyone, and we're going to feel the pain for a while. In Chicago, we paid 10.25% sales tax, which means if I buy a Nintendo Switch 2, it's going to cost me over $550, and that's whether or not Nintendo actually adjusts for the tariffs. Now, I have 3 nephews. One is an only child, and the other 2 nephews are brothers. Let me tell you, have you ever tried to convince a kid to share a Nintendo Switch? It does not work whatsoever. So if my sister-in-law wants to buy her 2 sons a Nintendo Switch 2 and 2 games, it's going to be over $1,200 just for the right to have gaming in the living room. And just as a little bit of an aside, this pain isn't just going to be felt on video games. I know there is a big overlap between gamers, whether they're retro gamers or modern gamers, and the board game industry, and Steve Jackson's Games is talking about a $25 game becoming a $40 game once everything is said and done for all of those tariffs when they're imported in. That is a big increase, but you have to expect the companies to be able to pass it off, or else they will not be financially solvent anymore, and they'll stop being companies. Because a lot of times people complain about the cost of things. They cannot be free. Companies do exist to make money, so they can continue to bring you more fun stuff in the instance of Steve Jackson Games. If we actually take a look at the tariff list, then again, I can't believe I'm doing this on a retro gaming channel, but it does matter a ton. You'll see all of the countries that are going to see these new tariffs, and a lot of the companies and countries that make these high technology products are going to be paying some of the highest tariffs out there, and that is going to be passed on to you in the form of more expensive hardware, more expensive games, more expensive everything. Although thankfully it does seem like chip manufacturing from Taiwan has not seen any sort of tariff hit, and that's just probably because everyone needs those chips and nobody wants to pay any more for them than they possibly have to. So at least there is the tiniest silver lining of this very stormy, very expensive cloud that's going to hit gaming very soon, because there's so many fun devices out there that people want. But if a Steam Deck goes from $400 to $550 to accommodate any sort of tariff, that's going to put it outside of the realm of affordability for a lot more people, and I just don't want to see gaming get harder to get into. I want it to be easier. And the funny thing is, I'm going to post this video and go to a movie with my wife, and I'll come out 2 hours later and look at the comment section and just see what sort of arguments are down there, because I'm pretty sure I know exactly what's going to happen, and I just decided it was too important of a topic not to talk about, because it is my channel, and I do want to address the things I like to address and just hope for the best, but we shall see. Yesterday's Nintendo video, the comments were very nice. I was surprised by that, expected it to turn into an argument. But just be prepared to start paying more for the things you paid less for last year. And it's not just inflationary issues. These tariffs are going to make basically every single thing that comes to our shores more expensive. And that's partially why you see a Japanese-only Nintendo Switch 2 that is region-locked with only Japanese language support. It's going to prevent gray market imports to try to avoid some of the tariffs on the end user, and it's going to allow them to actually keep the cost down so that their home country will be able to more readily adopt those consoles. But the reality is tariffs are here, and I talked to 3 independent companies, ones you could probably guess, but I'm not going to tell you their names. 2 of the three companies said that basically almost all of their profit margin will be lost on the next round of imports if nothing changes, and one company said they went from being profitable to going into the red and losing money on their items if these tariffs stick, because they have to pay 54% every time it hits North American shores. It's going to be a mess. It's going to cost you a lot more, and hopefully that comment section isn't a complete bar brawl. See you next time. Bye bye.